He said to me, Jonathan, you cannot stand for God and God not stand for you. The backlash was great. I felt it. I felt the stares. I felt the comments and everything that was happening. I felt the snickering. I knew what I had stood to lose, but I kind of said, you know what? I'm willing to lose it if it's for Christ.
Jonathan Isaac, you're famous for being on the Orlando Magic, but you're probably in some ways more famous for taking a stand. In fact, this is the name of your best-selling book. So it's been a few years now. You've had time to reflect on it. Tell me the story about what you did and why.
Oh, Lord. It's a lot. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you for putting this on, allowing me to come and talk. What did I do? Back in 2020, the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement and organization, I was faced with a decision to make. Was I going to follow suit with everything that was happening? Was I going to wear a Black Lives Matter T-shirt before a game and kneel for the national anthem? And it was a crazy time. It's so surreal even telling the story again, because it always brings me back to that moment of being there in the bubble and seeing everybody beside me kneeling down and everything that I went into my decision beforehand. But really, the heart of it came from my pastor. So before, after the death of George Floyd, after the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement and organization, I was faced with thinking in myself, what is it that I'm going to do? Kind of how did I perceive it for myself? And early on, I had tried to have conversations with other people that were deep into the movement, kind of for the Black Lives Matter movement and, its rise and everything. And I would try to sprinkle in a little Jesus of like, hey, I completely agree that was terrible. It was wrong. But Jesus is the answer. We're not really trying to hear that right now. And I understood, the passion and where they were coming from. And so I kind of stayed to myself kind of outside of the movement. And my pastor was preaching one day, Dr. Duran Hepburn at Jump Ministries Global Church. And he was telling a story about Jesus being captured and how Peter, chops off the guy's ear. And Jesus says, if you live by the sword, you'll die by the sword. And he kind of reworked that to mean, if we step into this moment, predominantly talking about Black people, with anger and hatred and kind of the same way, what feels natural to us, then we'll get the same result. It'll just continue to go in the path that it's been forever. But if Christians, Black Christians, white Christians could step into this moment and lead with love and compassion and grace and kind of maturity, in understanding where these things come from, then we could have real change. And so I kind of said, you know what, I think that's the position that I want to take. I want to hold dear to that, that we all fall short of God's glory, that I'm going to choose to love my neighbor that looks like me, that doesn't look like me, and offer that gospel of grace. And so we get into the bubble, and now there's a decision to make, because now it's real. It's not just something that I'm, keeping to myself. We get into the bubble, and we have a players only meeting. And, the players are saying, hey, there's a team that knelt before us a day before, and we're going to play the next day. We don't have a choice. We have to follow suit, because if we don't, then it looks like we're outside of the movement. And a teammate turned towards me in this meeting and says, Jonathan, what are you going to do? And I said, fellas, I'm not going to kneel, and I'm not going to wear the T-shirt. And they didn't like it in terms of just, they knew what it was going to create. And so they were kind of upset, and we kind of left it at that. And I just told them, this is what I was going to do, and that I didn't feel comfortable throwing stones from a glass house, that I have fallen short of my own life. And I didn't feel comfortable pointing at one person or an entire group of people and saying you're evil or wrong when I've done evil and wrong in my own life. And so that night, I'm on the phone with my pastor, and I'm telling him, really, I'm trying to get him to understand the gravity of the situation. He's not really into social media like that. He doesn't quite understand. And I said, I'm going to be a headline. Like I'm going to lose my black card. I'm going to be a sellout. I'm going to be a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But mainly I'm going to get hatred for this. And I hadn't signed my contract extension that was coming up the following summer. And so there was a lot of angst on my mind about what this could possibly lead to. I don't know. Am I going to kind of be out the NBA? Is the team going to want to sign me for this stance? And he said to me, Jonathan, you cannot stand for God and God not stand for you. And it was kind of like a mic drop moment. And I said, you're right. I knew you were right. I knew he's right. And we just went for it. From there, the next day happened, and we're getting ready to for the moment. And I remember just closing my eyes and praying under my breath, God, purify my motives. Let this really be about you. Like, don't let me try to take this for me. And I remember just seeing my teammates, kneeling beside me. and I just went with it. And the backlash was great. You know, I felt it. I felt the stares. I felt the comments and everything that was happening. I felt the snickering. Um, but I trusted. I trusted, and God has been faithful to me. And the book that you're holding is a testament of that, of God's faithfulness. The fact that I was able to write about it, the fact that it was able to become a national bestseller, and the fact that people understood where I was coming from. And so to have the swell of support, to have my jersey sell second highest in the NBA afterwards, there was so much support that came from it as well. And the book, and my pastor talks about there being a movie one day about my life and this entire story coming to fruition, and a brand has come out of it. So much has come out of it, and it's just
And
been the
we
goodness of
want to do
God.
a deep dive and find out about all those things. But when all this happened, you had no idea that would end up in a positive way. You stood to lose everything, didn't
Right.
you?
Absolutely. It was really scary. I didn't sleep the night before. Um, there's a verse that says, "He who saves his life will lose it, but he who loses his life for my sake will find it." And every time that I think about what had happened in that time, I think about that verse where what you just said. I knew what I had stood to lose, but I kind of said, you know what? I'm willing to lose it if it's for Christ.
Well, help me and my viewers understand some of the things that were going on, because actually the kneeling wasn't for like Black Lives Matter. It was for the national anthem, with the idea, what was it, that America was so racist
Right.
that you shouldn't respect the national anthem? Was that the idea behind it?
Yeah, that was the sentiment. But it was really, especially when it came to the NBA side of it, it was really this the promotion of Black Lives Matter and the Black Lives Matter organization and movement. And so that was it. That was really at the crux of it, that we don't need to kneel to stand for the national anthem until America lives up to its promise.
Now, all of that's changed in just, let's see, that was 2020, so
Yeah,
not even 5 years yet. Even the NFL took end racism off the end zone for the Super Bowl
really.
just a few days ago.
Gotcha.
And of course, it's come out in the press about all the corruption with the money that was raised with Black Lives Matter and so forth. Do you think that what you did had any effect on that, or do you think it was just something that was bound to wind down at some point?
It's kind of my nature to say no, but yeah, I can see the ripple effects. I've had conversations with plenty of athletes that have said, "Hey, if something like that happens again, I'm going to be with you." And even talking some athletes through their own stands and decisions that they've made has happened. So there's definitely been a ripple effect of people seeing it and saying, "I see what you're saying. I love the way you went about it, and I would do the same in the future."
Well, we're doing a story in Charisma magazine, so I was trained as a journalist, so
Yeah.
it's okay if I just interview you, right?
Yeah, of course.
I want to hear your whole story.
Yeah.
I know I've heard your story enough, and of course, because of the book, I know that you were from New York
Yes, sir.
originally,
Yes, sir.
and you moved to Florida when you were a boy. So
Yeah.
tell us about that. What
Yeah,
happened in
that
your
that that
family?
whole transition. So I grew up in Bronx, New York, four brothers, one sister. My dad worked at McDonald's, and my mom was a nurse. And there were even times that we had to sleep at the McDonald's because my dad worked the night shift and my mom worked the night shift. And so my dad had to take us to school in the morning, and that was the only place that we could go from there to school. And so, but funny enough, when we were kids, it was the best thing in the world. We didn't quite understand the gravity of the situation. It was just really fun to be able to be up late at night, seeing people walk into the McDonald's and eating McChickens and cookies and whatnot. And so my parents ended up splitting up, and my mom took us all to Naples, Florida. And so this huge kind of culture shock of
Why
uh,
Naples?
I'm not completely sure, honestly. I think I never really asked her. I never asked her why Naples, why we landed there. It's just where we landed. And there was a small community called Golden Gate, which is like inside of Naples, but it's more of a kind of lower income community that we lived. And we bounced around from kind of complex to complex for a while. But but yeah, and it was kind of my kind of new start, but it was riddled with uh just hardship because of the change of culture and community. And so one of the things that I was so used to doing in New York was roughhousing, horse playing, and that wasn't really something that was that was kind of smiled upon in Naples, Florida. So what I would do was I would get to school, and in my attempt to make friends, I would grab kids by their ankles and drag them, but they would laugh, and so I would think, oh, I'm doing something good. And ultimately, I got in really, trouble. And my mom was called to the school, and the principal was like, we can't have your son endangering the lives of our students. And that was the first time that I became like self-aware of like, oh, I'm not necessarily what I thought I was, or how other people perceive me is different than the way I perceive myself. And it started to create some anxiety about myself and just kind of insecurity about who I was. And there was this idea of trying to get people to like me, get people to love me. And so I began to work at it, class clown, and ultimately I found basketball, and that became the avenue, the vehicle to get praise. And so the girls wanted to talk to me, the boys wanted me to be on their team, and I kind of just dove forth and fell in love with the game and became the number one player in the state of Florida.
And so how did you discover how old were you when you discovered that you had a talent in basketball?
I would say it was kind of from other people. And so I think middle school, I started middle school. I'm not sure exactly what age that was, but once I started middle school, I got on an AAU team, which is a travel team. And, my teammates, the coach would tell me, he would try to work with me extra. So I kind of got the idea that I was talented. And I just kind of went full force with it. I didn't truly understand that I was NBA kind of talented until really up until I got to college. When I got to Florida State, everyone was kind of coming up to me like, you're projected to be a top 10 pick. And I'm like, oh, okay. And that's when it really came to life that I'm going to be in the NBA.
And so how did you overcome this self-consciousness that you were talking about?
Overcome is a powerful word. I would say how I've learned to deal with it is really my faith story. And so I got drafted. Well, to tell the truth, to go back to Florida State, I was the number one player in the state of Florida, playing basketball at Florida State, and I was on anxiety medication. And not very many people knew. It was kind of something that we kept under the rug to kind of protect my draft stock. And but yeah, I was on anxiety medication. I was having panic attacks on campus, a few times, and I was in therapy. Just the whole nine of this. It was just this underlying anxiety that I didn't really understand how to control. And there was just this pressure about being the big man on campus and having to be the person that everybody looked to. And so I didn't think I was capable. And so I get drafted to the Orlando Magic as the sixth pick, and I'm kind of living my life as an NBA player. And I meet this man on an elevator, and he stops me and he said, "Young man, I can tell you how to be great." And I said, "How?" He said, "You have to know Jesus." And I said, "Man, I know Jesus. I'm a Christian." And then that man is my pastor today. So Dr. Duran Hepburn that I mentioned before, he's the one that truly introduced me to Christ, introduced me to the love of God, and started to teach me about God's love being unconditional.
Well,
And
unpack that a little bit because
yeah,
it took more than just one conversation
oh, for
in the
sure, for sure, for
elevator.
sure. Going into the whole story is a lot, but you said we have a whole hour, so that's important. So the story goes like this. So I meet him on an elevator, and I said to him, "Oh yeah, I'm a Christian. I know about Jesus." And after that, I kept running into him. So running into him in the parking garage, in the front of the building. I'm thinking this guy's following me. I'm running into him so much. And he's saying to me, like, let's go to lunch. And I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I don't want to go to lunch with this guy. I don't know him. And finally, I say to him, "Hey, if I see you one more time, I'll go to lunch with you." Lo and behold, I see him again. And this is happening around the same time that I'm actually kind of questioning my faith a bit, because I went into, when I got into the NBA, one of my teammates invited me to a chapel. And so that happened 60 minutes before every game. And the chaplain says, "Luke 6:46, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I say?" And me growing up, I didn't say this, but my dad had us in church all the time. So I had somewhat of a foundation in Christ, but not a true understanding of a relationship with him. And so I said to myself, man, that's me. If somebody asked me, I would say I was a Christian, but I don't live that way. I don't really care to seek or to know who Jesus is. And so it began to eat at me. And I kind of came up with this mindset where I'm either going to prove this thing is right, or I'm going to drop the Christian label altogether. And so I started researching Christian apologetics, Frank Turek, Ravi Zacharias, William Lane Craig, all these different guys. I'm researching them and coming up and like learning all these different arguments that they come up with. And I'm saying, man, there really is kind of room for there to be a real God. Like, this thing is serious. And so that was around the time that I ended up going to lunch with him. And the lunch was great. We talked about God a little bit, but I didn't piece anything together about who he was. It was just, okay, a great lunch. And after I left, in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm done with this guy. I don't have to see him anymore. And what's funny is I didn't see him for a while after that. And when I see him again is the part of the story that kind of illuminates that God wants this guy in my life. And so one day I'm going to a movie with my old basketball trainers from Naples, Florida. Now they're in Orlando. They came up and we go to the movies. And they've always been trying to get me to kind of grow in God. Like, let's do a Bible study. Let's do this. Let's do that. And I'm like, I just want to play basketball. Just teach me basketball. And so they try to get me to go watch a Christian movie. I don't remember the name, but it was an awful movie. It was bad. It was really, really cheesy in the beginning. And they're like, they couldn't even sit through the movie and they wanted me to watch it. And so we leave that movie and we go watch Thor. And so I'm at the movie theaters for like 4.5 hours now because Thor's a long movie and we watch the beginning part. And we get outside of the movie theater and he asked me, where are you at with God? And I said, honestly, I'm searching. I'm watching videos. I'm reading my Bible a bit, but I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know. And he said, if you keep knocking, God's going to answer. You keep searching, he's going to answer you. And so I go to leave the movie theater. So I'm turning right outside on a street, and there's a car turning left onto the street that I'm turning off of. And we just kind of slow past each other. And I look, and it's the guy from the elevator, Doc. And I roll down my window and I say, me, can we go to breakfast tomorrow morning? And I drive home thinking, God wants this guy in my life. I don't understand it. I don't know why, but he does. And so we go to breakfast in the morning, and I'm telling him about this idea that I had to feed people. I want to pass out hamburgers and hot dogs to the homeless. And he said to me, you can't do that, because it was around Thanksgiving time. He said, if you want to feed people, you have to feed people right, correctly, the way you would want to be fed. I said, okay. He said, if you buy the food, I'll have my people cook it, and we'll really do something for the homeless. I said, sure. And I go, I'm following him to Sam's Club. And as I'm driving, following him, I'm saying to myself, you're crazy. Like, what are you doing? Like, it's this guy again. You don't know who this is. But I said to myself again, something about this feels right. We go to Sam's Club. I buy the food. Some people come up and grab it and take it somewhere. And I say to myself, I just fed this guy's family for a year. I'm never going to see him again, I bet. And so a few days later, I get a text message with an address. I show up to the address, and there is a huge line of homeless people wanting to be fed, getting food. And so I hop in line, I put my hairnet on. There's a beautiful young lady standing next to me that's also serving food, who's my wife today. That's where I met her for the first time. And afterwards, after I finish serving, we go inside of this, what looks like a church, but I don't quite understand it. I'm just kind of going with the flow. And I was injured at the time. My ankle was injured. And he prays over my ankle. Some other people come and pray over my ankle. And I remember just feeling loved. I remember feeling seen and cared for. And I went home that night, and I remember the sinner's prayer that we did in youth group when I was a kid. And I said, Jesus, you're real. Like, God, you're real. And I just felt like my steps were ordered and that God loved me. And I said on the side of my bed, come into my heart, be Lord of my life. And that kind of the rest is history. I started, connecting with Doc Moore. And finally he says, you should come to church with me. And I said, okay, if you're cool, your pastor has to be cool. I show up, they introduce the pastor, and it's him. And from then on, I've just been a part of the ministry going on 8 years now. He's really my spiritual father, my mentor. He's grown me up, and everything that you see today, from the book to the Unitas to the shoes to everything, he has his fingerprint on it.
Well, that's a beautiful story.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the book. You're not a writer by background.
Right, for sure.
Of course, you had a story to tell.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing to do. But how did the book come to be?
The book came to be because Doc, again, he came over to my house one day and he was dancing, super excited. He said, you need to write a book. And I said, oh, and a lot of times he says this stuff and I'm like, oh Lord, here we go. It's another idea. And he says, you need to write a book. He said, people know the stand, but they don't know the story. They don't know where you come from. They don't know the anxiety. They don't know what you struggle with. And the story is going to give this stand its true meaning. And so I said, okay, we'll go down the road. And what's funny enough is the next day I get a call from my agent, and he says, there's a lady that called and she wants you to do a book. And her name was Esther, and she worked for the publisher or the agency that helped me find a publisher and do the whole nine. And so it just kind of perfectly met and said, okay, this is obviously God. And so we just went down the road and we found a ghostwriter. She was awesome. Her name is Amy. And what we would do is she would write a chapter, and I would come behind her and revise the chapter and send it back. And we just kept sending it back and forth until we got to the final chapter, and we had a book. And the Daily Wire ended up being the lone publisher that was courageous enough to publish it, and it became a national bestseller.
That's exciting. And then he also had something to do with you starting your product line, didn't
Yeah,
he?
absolutely. And so same kind of fashion. While I was in the bubble, I was signed to Nike. I was a Nike athlete getting paid by Nike, and after I got injured in the bubble, they decided not to re-sign me. And so I remember going to him and saying, "Hey, uh, when I get back from this injury, I'll probably try to sign with Nike again or Adidas or another brand." And he said, "Why don't you start your own? Why don't you make your own sneaker? Why do you need to go with one of these companies?" And I just said, That's how it's done. You don't see players starting their own brands or shoes or whatnot." And so we went down the road and that process, and it came to life, and we created the Judah One, and it's the first NBA signature sneaker with a visible Bible verse on the outside, like kind of like prominent. It's not written in. It's not a Sharpie. It's a part of the shoe. And so then a few during that time of us producing the shoe, we kind of came up with the idea, why just do a shoe? Why not do an entire sports and apparel brand that can live in the marketplace as an alternative to where Christians and people of faith, lovers of God, lovers of country can say, I see what the world has to offer, but I'm going to choose to stand with the brand that it shares and shares my values and my ideology. And so that's where Unitas came about, and the name came from him. Even he called me one day and said, "Hey, you should name the brand Unitas, because I'm here at the church and I'm praying and I was telling God, you're the only one that can unite us." And that's when the name was coined. And so it's been
And it rolls off the tongue.
yeah.
It's a
It's been
great
an
name.
amazing endeavor. Just seeing people be blessed by it. And the thing that sticks out to me the most is just seeing young people and seeing other athletes wearing the sneakers. And I wore it all that season, but I'm a great player, but I'm not a household name in the NBA in terms of a superstar. And to see people wearing the shoe with my middle name on it, Judah, not because of me, but because of what's on the shoe, because of what the shoe represents, it just makes me happy.
So how did you get 3 Bible names?
My dad.
Your dad.
So my dad is Jacob. So I'm his fourth son. So my middle name is Judah. So Jonathan Judah Isaac, and that's how he did it. He's Jacob Isaac.
So what kind of response have you gotten to your line? I know, you know, uh, sports
Yeah.
stars make a lot of money. A lot of times it's a relatively short career, and then they have nothing. But you're actually an entrepreneur. You're creating something to live beyond
For sure.
whatever span your sports career would be.
Yeah, it's just like anything. Like it's just like my life. Like there's the people that vehemently disagree with the actions, the stands that I've taken or the actions that I've taken, but there's always been an overwhelming support behind it. Like I mentioned, my jersey sold second highest in the NBA after the stand.
And
And
you think it's because of the stand?
absolutely. Oh, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. People just understand it. And so the same thing with the brand. We completely sold out of the Judah One when it first dropped, because people just love the idea of parents being able to buy sneakers for their kids going into basketball games with the word of God in their feet. And there's been so many times where I'm at the free throw line or in the game and I look down and I recite the verse that's on the shoe, and for strength and encouragement. And so it's been great. The feedback has been great. It's just been the story of getting it out there and letting people learn about it and know about the brand. And so stuff like this is really cool and important. So thank you.
I want to find out more about your life. You told me about your parents. How about siblings?
Yeah.
And I want to find out more about meeting your wife.
Yeah. So I've got 4 brothers, 1 sister. They're all over the place. They're all over the country. Even a few of them are still in Naples around my mom, but my sister's in Minnesota. I've got an older brother in LA, living his life. So everybody all over the place. I've got 2 younger brothers. The older younger brother just got married and has a baby on the way. And now I've got the little guy, Jeremiah. He's playing sports and kind of just doing his thing. He loves having a brother in the NBA. So it's fun. And then my wife is just, she's amazing. She's a trooper. She's 2 months away from giving birth. And we were just at this speaking engagement, and she's working in the back to sell merchandise and the whole nine. So she's awesome. Our story started that day when I first met her at the feeding. And then it just grew over time. I became a part of the church. And what's so funny is I was used to women coming to me. That's just what I was used to being in the NBA. And so when I started coming to the church, I kind of expected the same thing, but she wouldn't. She really didn't give me the time of day. And what started happening was I started to go to prayer. Doc started to impress upon me that prayer was really important. And so during the season's going on, I'm waking up every morning at 6 a.m. and driving to the church to have morning prayer with him and the young lady would come as well. It's open to the entire church. So, but she was faithful in it, doing it every day. And so I would see her and we would have these small conversations. And over time, she just grew on me in terms of like just the woman of God that she was. And I saw that she took it really seriously. And I said, you're awesome. And I remember talking to Dr. Hepburn. I think I want to, get to know her a little better. And he said, go for it. And so that's kind of where our story started. We were friends for a year, dated for a year, and then got engaged and married. And now on our second kid.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So now you're a girl dad.
Girl dad. Yes, sir.
And it feels good, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. It's awesome. First one is Naomi. She's awesome. She's going to be 2 really soon. She's stepping into her own little personality, but she's awesome.
Let's talk about the shift that's happened in the country. We referred to it a minute ago.
Yeah.
A lot's changed since 2020.
For sure. Absolutely.
COVID is now kind of a thing of the past.
Yep.
And am I right in that you were the only player on your team that avoided the vaccine?
Yes, sir. We didn't touch on that. Yeah. So I was the only player on my team who decided not to get the vaccine, and that was a whole nother thing in and of itself. So we get out of the Black Lives Matter situation and we roll right into the COVID situation. So I was faced with taking another stand and saying that I believe that everybody had the free choice to get vaccinated or not, and that the people who were vaccinated didn't have to worry too much about the people that weren't. But yeah, that was immense backlash.
But other
for
than
that.
criticism, really nothing happened to you. I mean, members of the military that wouldn't take the vaccine actually got fired because President Trump is bringing them back with back pay. So the pendulum has really swung the other direction.
For sure.
Why do you think that's happened?
I think that people have just gotten tired of the hyperbole. I think the polarization has just died down. I was on a podcast the other day it's pretty much saying what's so interesting is that Trump won the popular vote, right? And most people, a lot of people, it kind of shocked them. And what I would say to people is, you have no idea. People that are your neighbors, people that you interact with on a daily basis, they go to your church, you see them in the grocery store, they like Trump, or they voted for him for various reasons. And I think that just over time, people have just come with like, oh, they're regular people. They're people who just want either lower taxes or, they stand for life, or just these different issues that they have different viewpoints on, but they're all still just regular people who love everybody, who want everybody to have a prosperous life in a protected country. And I think that over time, people have just gotten out of, or people have become okay with the name calling, or even think about it. The football players were doing his dance, on the field. I think that people have just said, I'm done. I'm okay with being name called. And I think just the name calling has lost its power to a large degree.
Right. When you call people racist all the
Right,
time,
exactly.
or Hitler, after a while, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything. Or in a way, it really didn't mean anything to start with. But it was almost like it was an effort to brainwash the public. And so now things have changed so much and seem to have changed fairly quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, people have really pushed back, and I think that even though that was happening, there was still a lot of efforts to push back against it as well. Like there were a lot of people fighting. You had amazing organizations that were fighting. You have the Elon Musk and a lot has changed. So with him taking over Twitter and the whole nine, I think it's just been an awesome just shift, and I think people have kind of pushed back against that agenda and are okay saying, okay, we're getting back to common sense. We were off our rails for a second there. And now we would just want to get back to common sense and just move forward.
And what amazes me is that it's happened so quickly and without a lot of pushback. You'd think that the people who've been kind of getting their way in the media and so forth and in the culture would push back. But my opinion is that it was all kind of superficial anyway. A lot of it was just rhetoric. What do you think?
Agreed. That's mainly when I say the name calling. That's really outside of there was some political power, that they had in terms of jobs, and like you said, even people losing their jobs, that was something that was real. But outside of that, it was just the cultural kind of stigma of, oh, you're one of them, you're one of those supporters, or you're a part of that group. And so, yeah, I think people just got tired of it, and rightfully so. And I think a part of the not seeing the pushback from the side that was kind of perpetrating it is because they really don't have any legs to stand on, because people are just tired of hearing it. People are, with Trump winning and some of the things that he's done so early on, people are just like, this is what we want. And they're okay with riding with them.
Well, that leads me to my next question. It's kind of controversial, and that has to do with transgenderism, especially as it has to do with sports. When I was growing up, I think maybe I knew that there was such a thing as transgenderism, but you never heard about it. It was not promoted. And then all of a sudden, everybody was talking about it, and were men who weren't competing very well in men's sports were now calling themselves women and competing in women's sports. And now all that's changed. Tell me your thoughts about it. Why do you think it came, and why do you think it changed back so quickly?
Well, I think honestly a part of the reason why it did come with such fury and it grew so fast was because people realized that with that they had a leg to stand on with this in terms of getting their way. It's almost like if I can find something that works, I'm going to stick with it. And I think that was a part of it was that. Um, I'm also careful, with just the lived experience of people. I'm going to sit here and say that everybody has an easy life, and there are people who struggle with different things and are trying to live their life as well, trying to figure it out. When you have people championing that and trying to push that forward, I can understand. I can see why this has happened or why it's come so far. But I've kind of always been from the standpoint of um, being compassionate and understanding where people come from, but at the same time, if we are going to, I guess, care for and lend a hand to this group, we would have to trample on the same group that we're trying to uh, to cover in a sense. So if I'm going to cater to a transgender athlete, I'm going to have to trample on a female athlete, and I think that that's wrong. And so that's kind of where I've been always with it. But at the same time, just leading with grace and compassion for understanding the situation. But I think truth is truth, and you have to stake your flag there.
Well, that's certainly a Christian attitude.
Yeah.
But for me, it defies common sense. As much as an 18-year-old boy identifies as an 8-year-old so he can play Little League
Right.
and win in that setting. Now, we never hear about that
I
kind
think
of
that's
thing.
happened a few times.
Has it?
Growing up in AAU basketball, there's a lot of guys playing. They're really older than they are, but they're able to
And
play.
lying about their
Lying
age.
about their age.
But in that setting, if they found out about it, they
Right,
would
they were in trouble.
discipline the
Yeah, for
boy,
sure.
and they would say, you can't play here
For
anymore.
sure.
And thankfully, the pendulum seems to be swinging back the other direction. And I think that there are a lot of people, you're talking about people that live next door and believe this. A lot of people just want to keep their heads down so they don't get it shot
True.
off.
For sure. Absolutely.
Because you've got bills to pay,
Right.
you have mouths to feed. And it was almost like certain people were persecuting people to intimidate everybody else to be quiet. And because of people like you who stood your ground, no pun intended, um, I think that people are a lot more brave. What advice would you have to people? Because very, very few people are ever going to be in the NBA. Very
Right.
few people are going to have the kind of national exposure. But a lot of people have to take a stand in total anonymity,
Right.
and they'll never write a book. They'll
Right,
never
for
have a
sure.
movie about it. What advice would you have for those people?
My advice would really just be the truth. You win in the end. You win in the end. It doesn't look like it. Every person that has taken a stand for even the issues that we were just talking about or over the course of everything that has happened are vindicated today. And it took a while to see that, and it took, turmoil, and maybe you lost your job, maybe something happened that was negative, but you've been vindicated. And so in the end, no matter how hard it is to take a stand for truth, or especially to take a stand on the word of God, it's worth it. And over time, it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but you win in the end. And so that would just be the encouragement that could continue to stand. Now we're all looking back at this moment saying, this was the person that stood. This was the person that stood. And you will be able to wear that badge of honor as the person that stood firm on the truth, even if the truth isn't seen right this second.
You said how much Bishop Hepburn has influenced your life.
Yeah.
Tell me about people whose lives you've influenced.
Shoot, I mean, honestly, what I hear from the book, every now and then I'll go on Amazon and I'll read some of the replies, and I'm truly like floored by some of the comments of people saying that it has reinvigorated their faith altogether, or they found faith, or young people reading the book, that think they're picking up this sports book about, this basketball player, but they leave saying, I want to follow Jesus. And it's just awesome. It's something that I don't deserve, and I know that it's him, and at the end of the day, he gets the glory. But it's been an awesome journey of hearing people talk about being inspired, or even just from the talk that we just had, having people come up to me afterwards is so surreal. Because a lot of times it's not the way that I see myself. And so to have people say, oh, you're such an inspiration, and you help me this, you help me that, it really does bring it all into light, into what God is up to.
And what vision do you have for the future of your life? You're a young man. You've got many, if the Lord tarries, and none of us know how long life is going to last, but you have most of your life ahead of you. What is
Yeah.
your vision for the future?
My vision for the foreseeable future, to continue doing what I'm doing right now. So I mean, obviously playing basketball, I want to keep doing that. And I want to continue to grow the brand, grow Unitas into where I see it being a huge brand that stands for God in the mainstream space. And so I'll tell you this story. A few weeks ago, probably about a little over a month ago, I was on Fox News, and I got a chance to talk about the brand. And there was somebody that was watching, a Jewish guy. And so I get this call, and they're saying, hey, this Jewish guy wants to talk to you. He watched the Fox News bit. And he says, hey, I'm a Jewish guy. I own a billboard in Times Square, and I want to give it to you because I just heard about your brand, and I want it to be bigger than Jordan Brand. I want it to be bigger than Jordan. And so I said, okay, okay. So we shot a commercial, and it's up right now in Times Square. And so I just want to see that grow. I want to see people be encouraged and inspired for their faith, and be able to wear it proudly, on their t-shirts and hoodies. And it's obviously the shoes is kind of the bigger one. But I want to see people honor God with every step. That's our motto: honor God with every step. And so I want to see that grow and see where it goes.
Well, as we wrap up this podcast, I want to know, is there something that you would like the readers of Charisma to know about you that we haven't covered so far?
I can juggle. To know about me, honestly, just it's honestly been all God. Like what I love about my story, and especially the book, is it's so clear that when we talk about my genesis, right? Like the anxiety, the being on anxiety medication, like that was really real. That was me, like on anxiety medication, seeing a therapist, into being able to stand in front of a room and share my testimony. It's such a change just in me, and it's not because of me. And I think that the story just paints the perfect picture of who Christ is, and that God has a plan for every person's life. And maybe what you're going through right now, really what you're going through right now, God is going to use to encourage and inspire other people. And so I would just want them to, one, continue reading Charisma, but to continue to just hold on to God, especially during this season and everything that's happening. Get to church. My pastor preaches all the time, the local church is important. My life was changed for the better because I met a man on an elevator that was bold enough to tell me the truth, that greatness, true greatness, is found in Christ. And so go to church, get plugged in, become who God has created you to be, and you'll find your destiny, you'll find your purpose, you'll find truth, and you'll find the life that you're supposed to live.
And if people want to connect with you, or if they want to get your book, of course, this should be available on Amazon.
Yeah.
And
Really, that's the
easiest way.
easiest way to get it. Go to Amazon.com. And for the brand, go to weareunitas.com, weareunitus.com, and shop with us.
Well, I want to thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to do this interview. You just spoke at our prayer breakfast here in Central Florida. Thank you very much for that. Thank you to my listeners and viewers for tuning in today to my podcast. Be sure to share this with others. If you don't subscribe to the podcast, be sure to do so. And leave a comment and let us know what you thought of what Jonathan Isaac shared today. Thank you for watching. God bless you.